You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
Hey y'all, it's Blake. Welcome to Season 4 of Abandoned, the All-American Ruins podcast. This episode kicks off a 4-part project called Fading Transmissions from a Republic of Ruins. It's a series embedded inside this season of the podcast, and the beginning of something a little bigger than immersive audio storytelling alone. Fading Transmissions is being developed as a live audio theater piece, and what you're about to hear is its first movement. This episode premiered on stage last December during my residency at Green Box Arts. And now, you're about to hear that live performance adapted for the podcast. Over the course of the season, the remaining movements will be released as audio-only episodes, fragments from the same, much bigger signal, while the full piece continues to evolve on stage. See, this is only where the transmission begins. And I say, let's start at the Sumner School. Before we begin, it should be noted that this episode of Abandoned, the All-American Ruins podcast, was recorded live at the Sally Bush Community Center in Green Mountain Falls, Colorado, with the support of Green Box Arts, a nonprofit organization founded in 2009, dedicated to fostering the arts as an essential, accessible, and transformative part of life. If you'd like to learn more or support their mission of nurturing creativity and enriching the community for generations to come, visit greenboxarts.org. I cannot thank them enough for providing me the time and space to start building this piece. Oh, and by the way, I have just one more quick note before we get started. If you're listening at home, this is an immersive audio piece, and it's best listened to with headphones on, imagination on, and everything else turned off. And you can't see it, but I am sitting in front of a glorious sea of headphones staring right back at me. Let's begin. Welcome to Abandoned, the All-American Ruins podcast. Season 4, Episode 1, Fading Transmissions from a Republic of Ruins, Part 1. This is not a story about abandoned buildings, despite what the title suggests. It isn't even about radio signals or America, because no, at its core, this is a ghost story. And I don't mean ghosts to scare you, necessarily. I mean the kind of ghosts that stay alive in transmissions that reverberate out into the universe, CB signals that blare like sirens about the parts of a nation we don't talk about, except quietly, behind closed doors inside the silos of our own minds. The kinds that flicker in and out, frequencies fading long after their antennas and ours power off. Sometimes radio static sounds like rain to me, maybe the kind that falls on a roof, maybe the roof of an abandoned dairy farm, for example. Indulge me. I want you to close your eyes.
From the earliest times, men have looked into the heavens and wondered about the immense, mysterious universe into which we are born. Astronomy is a wonderful example of man's ingenuity and skill.
I want you to feel your feet on the ground, your butt in the chair. If you're listening at home, your back against the bed or wall, and maybe even your toes on the kitchen floor as you prepare supper for a dinner party. Wherever you are, don't change a thing. All I want you to do is notice it.
The galaxy is about these explorations and about what has been revealed and is yet to be revealed by light from the heavens.
Do a quick inventory about what is going through your mind right now. Are you stressed out about the world? Is the winter solstice exciting you? Are you joyful? Are you depressed? Are you hopeful? Filled with rage? Are you all of these things all at once, or none of them at all? Now, I want you to put that inventory off to the side and just listen to the radio static, to the rain, sound without pictures, without cue cards, just sound.
Mysterious luminous patches, however, could not be resolved as either stars or clouds of gas and dust. For many years, astronomers published.
As you listen, start to take note of the images that are naturally developing in your mind's eye. Shapes, light, a place that isn't here in this theater or wherever you're tuning in. Here's the thing. Your brain is already 2 steps ahead of you. In 2014, neuroscientists discovered that when we listen to certain sounds, rain, footsteps, a child humming while he explores an abandoned dairy farm, something happens in our brains. Not just the auditory cortex, which is the part of the brain that handles hearing, but also in the early visual cortex, the part of our brain that's typically responsible for processing what we see. And when we hear something like rain, or footsteps, or a child's singing voice, these 2 regions start to work together in a sort of electric dialogue. A neurocollab, if you will. The auditory cortex transmits information into the areas of our brain involved in meaning and memory, and those areas send signals back to the visual cortex. It's a sonic stoking of the visual imagination, basically. And FYI, it's actually a lot more complicated than that, and I'm not a science professor, but that's basically the gist. Anyway, the result is simple. Your brain begins to build images for you. There's pictures without pictures, worlds without sight. And this, my friends, is exactly where this ghost story begins.
Called the Great Galaxy in Andromeda. For the most part, the universe was empty, but here and there, separated by vast intervals, were other great stellar systems, each composed of billions of stars.
You and I are standing inside an abandoned farmhouse at a once thriving dairy in Colorado Springs on the west side in the shadow of Blodgett Peak. It feels like a dream we can almost remember but can't quite hold. That rain on the roof is soft but insistent. The traffic on Woodman Road, which is paved now but was dirt back then, is sparse, especially in the summer when school is out. It's 1992. Rodney King's attackers have been acquitted.
We've all seen the pictures of Los Angeles police officers beating a man they had just pulled over. The city's police chief said
William Clinton is campaigning for his first presidency.
Make up our forgotten middle class. I proudly accept your nomination for President of the United States.
Nirvana has kicked Michael Jackson off the top of the Billboard charts with Smells Like Teen Spirit.
Suffering in the external world, that's just the Webster's dictionary.
I'm looking forward to this tour because it will allow me to devote time to spread the message of global love in the hopes that others, too, will be moved to do their share to help heal the world. Thank you for coming.
And when I am president, I don't want to forgotten no more.
Civil rights organizations say the Los Angeles Police Department has a history of brutality and misconduct that goes back a quarter of a century.
I'm 5 years old, and in the stillness of this moment, my brain starts to create its own pictures. The dusty air thickens and the walls shapeshift and objects appear, furniture, appliances, and with the objects come sounds. A man reading the newspaper, a farmer in the kitchen, shifting his weight, seated in an old wooden chair. A vacuum in the living room, a woman humming along with it, harmonizing with the electricity. Upstairs, 2 children sit in front of an RCA Victor 1953 AM/FM transistor radio, listening to Colorado Springs' own KVOR, patching in the nationally syndicated show Paul Harvey's The Rest of the Story, an episode called Farm Boy.
Now, the rest of the story. Once upon a time, there was a fair-haired farm boy named Jim who had 25 cats. Most of them lived out in the barn and chased mice. A few were beloved house pets. All of them had names.
Let's pause here for just a second, because to answer your question, no, I wasn't actually seeing these children or the woman vacuuming or the man in the kitchen. But then again, I was, because when I snuck into that dairy farm for the first time, shimmying through a small gap in one of the boarded up doors, I felt the sensation of anemoia, nostalgia for a time and place that isn't one's own but feels familiar. In 1992, as far as I knew, the word didn't exist yet. Blogs didn't exist yet. John Koenig's The Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows wouldn't coin it for at least another decade, probably more. But the moment I stood up inside that farmhouse for the first time, my imagination lit up. The objects that were actually there, furniture, appliances, a newspaper, fed something deep within me. I felt good. Better than anywhere else in the entire world. Safe. Healed, even. And the dairy farm became my sanctuary, my portal. Now, there's even more science behind this. And it's not just a whimsical 38-year-old recalling his childhood. I chased that sensation of anemoia because it stimulated me. And as an addict, over 12 years in recovery, I've spent a third of my life finding safe ways to help my very restless brain feel alive. In the ruins of the dairy, when my imagination began to fantasize the life that might have happened in that abandoned farmhouse, a hidden network in my skull awakened, the Default Mode Network, DMN, which includes regions like the medial prefrontal cortex, the posterior cingulate cortex, and the hippocampus, which is one of my favorite words. Researchers have shown that the DMN becomes active when the mind turns inward, while one daydreams, remembers, imagines, or simply drifts. These parts of the brain form the backbone of what neuroscientists call self-generated thought, the brain's ability to fill silence with imagery, associations, memories, and imagined pasts or futures. Over the course of this audio experience, right through America's ruins, I want you to remember the short trip we just took together to the very real abandoned dairy farm from my childhood. With your eyes closed, and the sound of the rain on the roof serving as your only anchor, you too experienced self-generated thought as your brain assembled fragments from your own memory and imagination to create the scene we're both experiencing together, like a radio transmission crackling in and out. That RCA Victor 1953 transistor radio should not have worked, but in my imagination, it did.
One of nature's greatest wonders is the ability of the human ear to distinguish among the millions of sounds around us. Listen.
But then, the dairy farm burned down. They built condos on top of it. All that's left is a sort of headstone, 2 chunks of stone wall. Though you wouldn't know it simply by looking at it. There's no marker, no information, and as far as I could tell, the transmissions were no more. The otherworldly experience of learning to access my imagination as a tool for healing was gone.
China has said that an outbreak of an unknown viral pneumonia is not the respiratory disease SARS that previously killed hundreds of people. Confirmation came from health authorities in the city of Wuhan, where there have been 59 cases so far, and 7 people are in a critical condition.
And then 2020 happened.
China, a man
A pandemic erupted, and amidst the global chaos, I rediscovered the childhood wonder of the abandoned dairy farm in a dream. And when I woke up from that dream, in the silence and the fear of the unknown, I decided, once again, to go exploring. I felt called by that unknown source, that dreamy feeling of a time and place that doesn't belong to me, even though it feels so familiar. And so I began to venture out to abandoned spaces, just like I did when I was a kid. Puttering around the abandoned dairy farm in the shadow of my childhood upbringing, where I felt the ghosts of those transmissions begin to reappear in my ears. Only this time, America's ruins started to tell a very different story. A story of the underbelly of a republic. I spent over 5 years taking adventures into America's ruins, trying to unlock the reason why I feel so drawn to them, magnetized, why I've been so obsessed with this feeling of anemoia all these years. I started to build this body of work, All American Ruins, a multimedia travelogue that documents those experiences exploring abandoned spaces through fantastical storytelling in a blog, in a web series, and now this very audio podcast, including what I'm doing here at Greenbox Arts, watching the metamorphosis of this body of work evolve into a new format, trying to dig deeper into why I feel so called to tell the story of America's ruins on stage with you. You might say I'm concerned about the state of America's past, present, and future, the ghosts that live inside of all three. I drove across the country to get here, 14 states, New York, all the way to California and back to Colorado. And during the drive, I realized, indeed, this is not a story about abandoned buildings. It's a story about what we try to abandon in ourselves, in our collective memory, even in the Constitution, and what refuses to stay lost. Ghosts. Now, this is not to say that fading transmissions or republics or ruins can't be ghosts, because they can. They absolutely can. Take the abandoned WPTF radio station in Raleigh, North Carolina. They transmitted their final signal in 1987, which, incidentally, is the year that I was born.
Good morning and welcome to our FM listeners now joining us. You are listening to radio stations WPTF and WPTF-FM in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Or let's take Russia's ongoing UVB-76 shortwave broadcast, first attracting global attention in the early 1980s. Thought to be a Russian military line, its purpose has been speculated for years. It comes from somewhere, and every once in a while you'll hear a voice spouting nonsense in Russian, of course. But the mystery and intrigue and interest has faded with time. We've gotten bored with it.
And we request your continued comment on our program. The temperature of Raleigh Dawn, 56 degrees at 5 o'clock.
I'd like to ask Senator Douglas a question. In your opinion, do you believe that a majority of Southern Negroes would rather attend non-segregated or segregated schools?
Well,
but not all transmissions come through antennas. Some come through courtrooms, our judicial system, or what's left of it.
And if you have separate schools, I think the Supreme Court ruled properly.
Take the Sumner School in Topeka, Kansas, for example, the scene of the crime per se, the foundation for the story of Brown versus the Board of Education. You'd think that we would celebrate it as a symbol of progress the moment the United States Supreme Court abandoned separate but equal as a national ideology.
The civil rights picture of those years was one of violence.
of segregationists lashing out in resentment at the school desegregation decision. The names in the news were names like Little Rock and Clinton, Tennessee. Somewhere outside.
Here's the thing. Ideas don't disappear because the highest court in the land tells them to. Oftentimes they go underground or haunt us, and you see them in modern school segregation numbers that look almost identical to the late 1960s.
You may have heard by now the city with the most segregated school system in the country is not somewhere in the Deep South or a red state in the Midwest. No, it's us, New York City, and just last...
Segregation in schools in 2022. Numbers show it is a very real problem.
It's been 50 years since the U.S. Supreme Court ordered Denver public schools to integrate classrooms, but a new report commissioned by a Latino advocacy group suggests the district has taken steps backwards in recent years. They're calling it resegregation.
You see them in red line districts that still haven't recovered, or in the funding gaps between majority white and majority black schools, in book bans targeting anything that mentions race, gender, science, or really any subject that makes certain people uncomfortable, including history like the Brown versus Board of Education decision. A history victory, a civil rights victory certainly, but the social reality, we're still tuning that dial to get the frequency just right. And that's where the irony lies. The Sumner School in Topeka, Kansas, the building itself, the one that should exist as a proof of progress, it's abandoned now. Boarded up, a ghost of its own making. Even critical history can be tuned out like a radio signal. So let's see if we can rediscover that frequency at our first stop. The Sumner School in Topeka, Kansas.
She says about 80% of black and brown students are in low-income schools, a trend that can impact the students around the
What pleases me most are Topeka's educational facilities. Going right on down to the kindergarten level, Topeka has schools to be proud of. It is characteristic of a community which wants the best for its children that education rates top priority in the municipal budget.
You know, for a building that caused so much uproar, this really seems to be... It's just so fascinating that it's so empty. I'm standing in front of what looks like any slightly Gothic American elementary school. 2 stories, faded brown brick, decorative stone bas-reliefs carved across its exterior. The building, tucked just far enough off the road but still well within earshot of I-70 in Topeka, has never been fully remodeled. The neighborhood around it has changed, but the structure itself hasn't. Most of it dates back to 1936, during the Art Deco period. The architecture is, for lack of a better term, creepy. Those bas-reliefs of children, for starters. In some contexts, the unique method is beautiful. Carvings of stone where the images rise slightly from the surface, like a painting trying to step forward. Here, in the context of America's civil rights history, it's unsettling. Cherubic faces with no pupils or emotion, arranged in triumphant, glorified poses, and yes, it's exceedingly likely that they're all white. Now, above the largest panel of carvings, 3 young girls stand together, and on the south wall, guarding the schoolyard, hovers a saintly-looking woman posted up in the same style. And the grounds are completely overgrown. The only signs of life are the 4 security cameras, each one aimed at one of 2 remaining entrances. It's interesting, there's a Ring doorbell camera right on the door. On the south side, a rusted fence runs the perimeter, woven with brittle fall weeds and dried vines. The adjacent lot is nothing but dirt, gravel, cracked asphalt, a playground swallowed up by the sinkhole we call time. Now, you wouldn't know it by looking at it, but Sumner is one of two famous primary schools in Topeka. But unlike the Monroe School, the site that, in years after its closure, attracted history buffs and tourists to the story behind Brown versus the Board of Education, the Sumner School, despite having been designated a National Historic Landmark in 1987, again the year I was born, rarely gets mentioned, even though it played a direct role in the case.
At the time the suit was filed, Topeka was partially integrated. There were integrated neighborhoods, there were integrated high schools, integrated junior high schools. The only schools in town that were not integrated were the elementary schools. And this was the reason the suit was instigated, because of...
It was the Sumner School that refused to admit 9-year-old Linda Brown, even though it was only a few blocks from her home in the Westboro neighborhood of Topeka. The Sumner School sits at 330 Southwestern Avenue. The Monroe School sits 21 blocks away.
I remember the walk as being very long at that time. In fact, it was several blocks up through railroad yards and crossing a busy avenue and standing on the corner.
I Google mapped it. Enrolling Linda at Sumner would have saved her an hour of walking each and every day. That's 5 hours a week that she could be using to study, to do homework, or quite frankly, just to be a kid.
Walking, tears freezing up on my face because I began to cry because it was so cold. And many times I had to turn around and run back home.
Ironically, the Brown family home, once at 511 West 1st Street, is now just a connector off of I-70. The house was demolished when the interstate went through in the late 1950s, only 2 years after the Brown versus the Board of Education decision, and by then, Linda was well past elementary school, so she never even got to see just one day inside of a Sumner classroom.
We were concerned about the amount or distance that the child had to go to receive an education. My father believed very much in right, and he felt that it was wrong for black people to have to accept second-class citizenship, and that meant being segregated in their schools, when in fact there were schools right in their neighborhoods that they could attend.
Today, I'm sitting in front of the building again, more than 5 years after I stumbled on it during a solo road trip in the COVID summer of 2020, months before I launched All American Ruins. I wasn't particularly curious about Sumner at first. It wasn't until I realized it was abandoned that I felt the weight of its history. A building that caused such a ruckus, which only set off a national transformation, now sits boarded up, fenced, and ignored. I was emailing with a local historical society, and even they called it, quote, an eyesore. Apparently, some Christian church in California owns it now, and they're not very communicative about their plans for the building. But what still gets me is how something so monumental boiled down to something so basic. Because here's a kid who just wants to attend the school closest to her home, a familiar place that doesn't require surrendering precious time to walk an hour instead of a few minutes, all because of her dark skin. I really don't know what I'm doing here quite exactly yet. I know that I want to do something with Sumner Elementary, I just don't quite know what that thing is. Over the years of producing this show, I've acknowledged that sometimes demolishing a painful structure can feel healing, like the Broward Women's Prison, which housed serial killer Eileen Wuornos, along with many others, including hordes of people failed by the systemic racism this country was built on, a history you cannot rewrite, no matter how hard you try.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I lost my life because of it. Couldn't even get a fair trial. Couldn't even get a fair investigation or nothing. Couldn't even have my appeals right. You sabotaged my ass, society, and the cops, and the system. A raped woman got executed. It was used for books and movies and shit.
Oh, they have a plaque for the Board of Education behind these giant chain link fences. And then there are buildings like the White House, structures that many cling to collectively as symbolic, patriotic, architectural heirlooms. The recent demolition of the East Wing feels devastating to some, almost metaphoric, while others, some of the descendants of indigenous people whose land was stolen and replaced with a giant white house, might shrug and say, yeah, so what? That patch of green was ours first. And what'll probably end up happening is I'll probably wind up walking around the school, but it is a fascinating concept to think about. This building that was such a troublemaker is now closed. But seeing the Sumner School still standing here, boarded up, fenced off, covered in security cameras, makes me feel equal parts sad and vindicated. Like I'm right to see the irony in all of this. Linda Brown would be well into her 80s by now. I found a childhood photo of her recently. She looks so sweet, so sensitive, so deeply human, normal. And standing here listening to the wind hum through the fence and the old brick, I can't help but feel like her story still lingers on around here, on this quiet city block. Not in the bas-reliefs or the architecture, but in the silence. And in the stillness of what wasn't allowed to happen. I don't think there's really much else to say, but I'd be remiss if I didn't come capture some of the sound in front of Sumner Elementary School. 330. Forget the street that we're on. If you're just tuning in, welcome to the 4th season of Abandoned, the All-American Ruins podcast. Join me as I take you on immersive sonic journeys, recounting my expeditions of abandoned spaces across the United States, which I transform into fantastical audio experiences that allow you, dear listener, to dive into my imagination with me, or maybe inspire you to use your own. If you don't want to miss it, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And please remember to subscribe, rate, and review because it does really help. Also, if you like to read or enjoy amateur photography, just know that each episode of this season is adapted from the original All-American Ruins blog, where you can catch up on more of my adventures. Just visit allamericanruins.com or follow me on Instagram at allamericanruins. This episode of Abandoned, the All-American Ruins podcast, is written, edited, produced, and performed live at the Green Box Arts Sally Bush Community Center in Green Mountain Falls, Colorado, by me, Blake File, with post-production studio space courtesy of Radio Kingston, WKNY, AM 1490, FM 1079 in Kingston, New York. Special thanks to Stev Hall Allen for picking me up off my ass to finish this thing, my big brother Ryan for providing every episode with valuable feedback, my mom Elizabeth for editing every blog post I ever transformed into these audio experiences, the entire Greenbox Arts staff for welcoming me in, and you, my friends in this theater and listeners across the world, for taking your time to explore these abandoned spaces with me.